I honestly don't know if I can remember a game that was as hyped as Cyberpunk 2077 was, and I definitely can't remember a game that was as hyped as Cyberpunk 2077 was, but also managed to completely screw it up. Before this game came out, there were so many trailers and hype marketing that promised that this game was going to be one of the best games that anybody has ever played. It was going to be huge, so much to do, and a once-in-a-console generation experience. But when it came out, it was not that. It was broken and a complete mess. So now I want to talk about whether or not, after all this time of them working on the game and improving it, has Cyberpunk 2077 redeemed itself. CD Projekt Red, the developers of Cyberpunk 2077, are coming right off the heels of The Witcher 3, which was an absolutely massive game that was beloved by an insane amount of people. People loved The Witcher 3, so naturally, whenever Cyberpunk 2077 was going to come out, people were freaking out. They spent years marketing this game. I can't tell you how many times I've seen gameplay previews or trailers that didn't even end up being anything like the actual game, to the point where they even got a celebrity involved, Keanu Reeves. So obviously, after all this time and these literal years, like years of marketing and hyping up the game, you can imagine the expectations were absolutely through the roof. And really what makes it interesting is just how misleading the early demos really were, because they were absolutely nothing like the final game that ended up coming out. Now, in the real world, there's a lot more that goes into it than just negligence. There's going to be management issues, there's going to be crunch on the developers, there's going to be pressure from investors. I get that, but one thing that really absolutely pisses me off and I cannot stand are games that outright fucking lie. If that is not what your game is going to look like, then stop showing fucking gameplay of the game that doesn't exist. It drives me insane. I literally do not understand how it is legal to show a completely different game that's not even real. It's not even really a game. It's just a fucking tech demo that they pretend is the game to make you think that the game is 5 times as much as it's gonna be. That should be fucking illegal. There is not an excuse on this fucking planet you can come up with that would justify that to me. If you think you're gonna have a good game, then you need to stand on that shit. Because completely making up some shit and showing something when you have nothing to show is absolutely disgusting. Ubisoft is huge for this. If you go back and watch the original trailer for Rainbow Six Siege compared to what the game actually was when it came out, or just about any fucking game that they've released, you'd see that it's not even the same game. It's not even in the same ballpark. The gameplay is completely different. The graphics would be completely different. Every single thing about those initial reveals that Ubisoft likes to do compared to the games that come out are completely different. And I cannot fathom how this is legal. We as gamers and customers should not be allowing this shit to happen. It might be the most misleading and disgusting shit that these developers do in gaming. Like, literally completely at all. Am I a dumbass, or is that literally not false advertising when you are showing a product that doesn't exist and pretending that it is another product that is going to be nothing like what you're showing? If I promised you that your car was going to have 750 horsepower, look like a Ferrari, and hit 0 to 60 in 3.5 seconds, I imagine you'd be pretty fucking upset after you spent $250,000 and ended up with a Honda Civic. Fuck that, and fuck every single company that does this. You're dog shit. That shit should be illegal. And to be completely honest, whenever this game was getting the amount of hype that it was, I don't want to sit here and act like I'm hindsight 2020 and that I knew exactly what was going to happen, but I had a gut feeling that this game was going to have massive issues. Not even because the game looked bad or anything like that, but just because the absolute amount of hype that it got. And every single time it seems that a game gets that amount of hype, it just shits the bed. I mean, you can't help but draw parallels to other games like No Man's Sky, Anthem, Fallout 76. Like, it happens over and over again where these games get hyped to fucking oblivion. They spend all their money on marketing, they crunch the developers, the game comes out and it sucks. So now that we've talked about what the game promised it would be and that it wasn't, let's talk about what actually we got when it came out and what it is now. And if you don't know what Cyberpunk 2077 is, which would absolutely blow my mind, and I don't know how that's possible, you live under a rock. Seriously. Read anything on the internet, watch any video, how do you not know? Cyberpunk 2077 is something like a first-person shooter RPG type hybrid that was actually pretty interesting. One thing that I really enjoyed particularly in this game is the progression, because you have multiple ways of progressing. You have the weapons, where you can get better weapons. You have the cyberware, which are like body upgrades where you upgrade your arms and your hands and your eyes because you're literally like a fucking cyborg. And skills, just overall the same shit that you get in every other game where you can upgrade your actual abilities. And all these combined actually lead to a pretty deep level of customization and just really lets you tailor your character to playing how you want to play. You can be a hacker, you can do things stealthily, you can do brute force, whether that be running around with fucking shotguns or AKs, or maybe you you want to do some melee and run around with a katana and block bullets, you can do all that. And if I had to give the game props for one thing in specific, it would be this. The way that you can actually shape how you play the game is pretty good, and one of easily the most enjoyable things about this game. Now, the one thing that people think of when they think of Cyberpunk 2077 is bugs, because when the game came out, it was nothing short of basically just completely broken. And I mean literally game-breaking shit, like people's games crashing, running like complete ass, characters clipping through shit, vehicles spawning randomly. I mean, it was awful, and I didn't play it at that time. I had only watched gameplay of it and watched people's videos on it because I knew, first of all, that I didn't want to play some broken ass shit like that, and I was already salty about the fact that they completely misled people with all those early tech demos. So I decided I was gonna wait, and that's what I did. I waited, and so I've played the game years after the fact. I have to give credit to CD Projekt Red for one thing, and that is that most of those bugs have been fixed. A lot of the issues with the game are significantly more ironed out and not as prevalent as they was. I did have some issues when I played it and some bugs, but I didn't have anything that I would say is game breaking or made the game unplayable in any kind of way. I mean, if you've played any Bethesda game and those broken pieces of shit, then you should definitely be more than able to handle this these days. It is such an improved experience from what they originally came out with, and the game is fun. Like I mentioned, those variety of different play styles that you can have is fucking awesome. The way that every gun feels different, and there's so many different weapons, and that's even assuming that you really want to use weapons like that, because like I said, you can really focus on hacking or you can focus on stealth, but even just using the weapons, the shotguns feel good, the assault rifles feel good, the melee weapons feel good, and they all feel different. The hacking is sick too. You can buy different hacks and upgrade them and get more powerful that way, or you can run around and be a little ninja. But when I played, I focused on hacking and smart weapons. I had the guns that would automatically lock on to enemies and shoot them for me, and once you start getting to a certain point, that shit got broken, dude. I literally had my guns locking onto people's heads from half a mile away, an AK-47 just curving bullets, hitting them behind cover and everything. It was great. It was so much fun. So as far as the way the game actually feels and plays, specifically in the combat, it is great. It is actually so good in the way that they just really let you play how you want to play. But one thing about the gameplay that is absolute and utter dog shit is the driving. The driving in Cyberpunk 2077 is some of the worst driving I have ever experienced in a video game in my life. People like to complain about Grand Theft Auto 4's driving, but let me tell you, the driving in that game feels like Gran Turismo compared to this shit. If you want to feel like you have any control of these cars while you're driving them, then that's just too damn bad, because you are not going to. There is not a single vehicle in this game that does not behave like garbage and feel like complete trash. And I mean any of them. Every single vehicle just feels like shit. Now, for those of you out there that might think I'm being a little bit too harsh in saying that Cyberpunk 2077 has the worst driving of any game that I've ever played, then I don't know what to tell you. You need to go play it and feel this trash for yourself. Now, it didn't ruin the game for me because the driving isn't the main part of the game, but you sure do a lot of driving for it to be so fucking bad. Now, I remember reading somewhere, and I don't know if this is true, so take this with a grain of salt, that what they did was they actually took the horse mechanics from The Witcher 3 and turned that into the driving mechanics for Cyberpunk, and that would make so much fucking sense. Like I said, it doesn't completely ruin the game, but I would 100% call it a stain on the game, because it was something that I couldn't help but notice the entire time that I was playing, and it only started to irritate me more and more. Let's move on before I really start to get fucking annoyed. Okay, now we can talk about the story, and I have a lot of mixed feelings about this as well. There are some things that the story did really well, but there's also a lot of things that they did that I really did not care for. So let's first talk about the things that they did well. One thing that they did well is the character that you made. It felt like you could go through the story how you wanted to be. If you wanted to be just a massive asshole the whole time, you could do that. If you wanted to be just a massive pussy, you could do that too. And there were a lot of instances where your character's background that you choose at the very beginning of the game actually came into play for the decisions you could make and the different dialogue options that you could get. All of this stuff was done great. I mean, it's that classic Skyrim feel where you go through the dialogue, you can choose whatever options you want, and you can be the type of character that you want to play as. So as far as that goes, it was great. They did great on that. So that's about the extent of what I did like, other than I will say that the side missions and stuff are pretty good, and some of the stories in that are pretty interesting. but as far as the main plot goes, I did not like it. My roommate actually really did like it, so maybe this is just me, and this is more of a subjective thing than an objective thing, and you might like it a lot more than I did, but I didn't like it. A quick overview of the story I'll give you. I'm not going to spoil nothing, because I do think that this game is still worth playing, but you play as this guy named V, who's just like a shitty mercenary. I say shitty as he guns down 200 people a day, but you're trying to go through this dystopian fucking city that is just ran completely by mega corporations, aka the United States now. But it's ran by these corporations, and everybody has these like cybernetic enhancements where they all have like upgraded hands that make them punch really fucking hard. They got upgraded eyes that they can see through shit. They've got upgraded feet where they can wiggle each toe individually. And this guy named V eventually has, I don't know how to explain this if you haven't played the game, but he ends up with another person inside of his head who ends up going with him throughout the whole game. And this other person just so happens to be Johnny Silverhand, or as you might have known from all the promotional material, Keanu Reeves. Now, I don't think I can explain the issues that I had with the actual story of the game without just spoiling the absolute hell out of it. If you guys want me to start doing these with spoilers, let me know in the comments, but as of right now, I'm not going to do that. I'll just keep it a little vague, but the story was just not for me, and I didn't enjoy it really at any point. About the first 15 to 20% I was into it, and then immediately it just started to drop off, and I got less and less interested in the story as the game went on, and I really started focusing more on the side missions and stuff like that. But Johnny Silverhand is so fucking annoying in this game. They went and got Keanu Reeves and put him in here just so they could use his face and his voice in this game and in the trailers and be like, look at this, guys, we have Keanu Reeves, just for him to completely fucking suck. His character sucks, not interesting in any way, in any capacity, at least to me, and his performance also shit. Now, I don't know if this is on him or the people that were directing him, but Keanu Reeves in Cyberpunk 2077 is not good. His character is stale, it's one-dimensional, and all his lines are delivered the exact same way. He's completely uninteresting, did not grab my attention at all, and if anything, was a fucking nuisance on the story and did nothing but aggravate me throughout the entire playthrough. That character alone could have been a big part of the reason of why I stopped fucking with the main story and went and did all the side missions. But before I rant on this forever, let's go to something else that's positive again. So after I've been going back and forth with being positive and being negative about this game and not really knowing how to feel about it, and you guys probably not knowing how I feel about it, one other thing that really stands out in this game is the city. They put a lot of work into the city in this game. There is so much detail, and the way that it looks and the complexity of it is phenomenal. It's great. The variety in the different districts like Watson, Pacifica, the Badlands, they all feel different, and they're all like a nice little unique flavor. And you couple that with this cyberpunk aesthetic with all of these neon lights and massive buildings because it's ran by all these mega corporations, and it has like a blend of retro and futuristic stuff at the same time, which isn't just unique to them or this game. That's like a classic cyberpunk feel that has been around for a long time already, but they do a great job of it in this game. It is one of the best looking cities. The only thing about that is that while it's one of the best looking cities, it's still not one of the best cities. And the only reason I say that is because while it looks amazing, there isn't a lot to do. There's a lot to look at and a lot that looks good to look at, but there's not a lot of interactivity with the city. So while visually it looks great, once you start getting into it, it gets pretty shallow. But on the topic of looking great, the whole game looks great. Specifically, if you're playing on a PC with some juice and you manage to play this game with ray tracing, this is one of the few games that actually takes advantage of ray tracing and makes it seem like it's worth it, because a lot of games that have ray tracing definitely feel like it's just a tacked on feature, and we've gotten so good at making games look good without ray tracing that it almost is never worth the amount of performance hit that you take to have it on, with Cyberpunk 2077 being an exception, because if you're playing with ray tracing, the game looks incredible. The lighting in 2077 just in general is some of the best lighting in a game, especially when you take into account, like I said, all the neon signs and all that stuff that just makes it look even better and helps it pop and really push it in your face how good the lighting looks. So visually, it looks great. One of the things that ended up holding this game back the most was when it released. Like I said, it was a complete broken mess, and the problem was that it was especially broken on consoles, particularly the base PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, which at the time of release was just about everybody that was playing this game. The vast majority of people playing this game were playing on those consoles, so the vast majority of people playing this game got a trash experience. All the way up until, I remember this vividly, CD Projekt Red telling people that if the game was too broken for them to ask Sony for a refund, and Sony said hell nah and took the game completely off of the PlayStation Store. Now that shit was unprecedented, and honestly that's what CD Projekt Red gets. Now on the PC it wasn't nearly as bad because, well, I mean, it's PC. But the amount of just incomplete features that were in the game and an insane lack of polish really had people torn between the amount of ambition that they had for this game and how poorly executed it actually really was. And what's funny to me is how well received Keanu Reeves was, especially in the reviews, and his character, when I think he was the weakest in the entire game, to the point of being a detriment. But before I go off on that, let's not go down that fucking road again. Now, a lot of these things were fixed, but by this point, so many people had already written the game off, and in today's world with people's short-ass attention spans, you do not have a lot of time to capture that. So while the game is still big and still well known, and they fixed a lot of that, it was almost too little too late, and they had the lightning in a bottle, and then they dropped the fucking bottle on the floor, and then the director went and stepped in it and cut his fucking toe, bleeding all over the floor and shit. And you know, that's what you get for making those misleading demos and trailers that did not reflect the game. Now, over time, public perception of the game has improved a lot, from that initial buggy shit show that they released to a game now that I would say is actually really good. Now, it's got some problems, but it is a good game. But the magic that they had throughout the marketing and at the time of the release was lost, so I can't imagine the actual scale of how much money they've lost and damage that they've done to their reputation because of it. Even though that they ended up fixing it, you still can't undo that. You still hyped up a game for years, released trailers and demos that were nothing like the actual game, and then dropped a fucking buggy mess, charged $70 for it, not including special editions, for a game that most people couldn't even get to fucking work. CD Projekt Red got exactly what they got coming to them, but that leads it to where it is now. Do I think that this game is worth playing today? Yes, I do. I think you should get it on sale, if for no other reason than just to spite CD Projekt Red for their scummy business practices with this fucking game, because it is a game that is worth $70, but you should get it on sale just because fuck them for doing all that. And I wish that people would learn from this, but you know that they're just not going to. The next game that gets hyped is going to get pre-ordered out the wazoo, and then it's going to drop and be buggy and broken and not anything like they promised it would be again. And not just CD Projekt Red, any game developer. People are still going to buy this hogwash right out the gate, and then they're going to complain about it on the internet when it's not what they paid for. And I just don't know what to tell some of you guys, because you guys are just never gonna learn. In this day and age, games come out broken and they don't work. And if you don't know how to handle that, you'd be much better off just waiting and seeing how the game is actually received before you go and spend all that money on it yourself, especially if you don't have the money to spend. So in its current state, the game is good, it's worth playing. CD Projekt Red management, you're a bunch of fucking scumbags, and I hate you. But I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. Whether you did or didn't, leave it down in the comments below and let me know. But either way, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.